Thank you. All right, so I'm Nishant Garg. I'm an assistant professor at University of Urbana-Champaign. Actually, my student Krishna was supposed to give this talk, but he graduated 3 weeks ago. So he's finished his PhD and now started to work at FHWA. So I'm giving this talk on behalf of him. But this is basically summarizes the work he did over the past 4.5 years, developing Raman imaging for cementitious systems, right? And I underline the word here, phase specific. What I mean by that, I'm going to explain as we go. And let's go through that. Well, the first thing is we're going to start with a little bit of introduction. Why are we doing what we are doing? And then how I've broken down this talk is really the two main sections, static systems and dynamic systems. By static systems, we mean systems which are stable, not moving over time. So we're looking at a piece of a picture which is not moving, and dynamic systems are things which are undergoing changes. So if you think about an analyst toolkit, right, you can have something like this you can buy from Home Depot. It has all kind of different tools, wrenches, pliers. There's even a hammer, right? There's a saying that if you have a hammer, all you see is a nail. So for hammer fans, there's a hammer there. If you think about this technique of Raman imaging, I see this as a tool which is right now not in the analyst toolkit, right? So in this case, this is, let's say, an adjustable wrench I just picked up, which could be a potentially useful tool to add to this toolkit. So that's the whole idea, that we have all these amazing tools already. Can we add another tool to understand concrete better? Then I thought I want to kind of spice it up a little bit. So I gave a prompt to ChatGPT and asked me to give an image of what this kind of a tool would look like in a traditional toolkit. So this is what it came up with. So it has apparently put all those standard tools on all the sides, and I think in the middle it has put these kind of some fancy futuristic tools, which could be, let's say, representing Raman imaging. It also tried to make some buildings out of some of the tools on the top. I don't know what it's trying to do there, because I did tell it that I'm at the ACI. Okay, outline of this talk. So we're going to start with static systems. For static systems, we're going to talk about granite, a siliceous aggregate, very common in concrete, ordinary Portland cement, calcium sulfur-aluminate cement. We're going to talk about coal-based ashes, specifically bottom ashes, which could be part of the landfill ashes. I want to talk about a new kind of ash, the waste-to-energy ash. If you burn off waste, what kind of, this is the ash you produce. And then dynamic systems, we can look at things such as, from a durability point of view, growth of ASR gel. We can look at things such as carbonation, CO2 sequestration over time. And then there's a couple of other things here I have not put in because just there's not enough time and data, but you could also look at things such as corrosion and the corrosion process. So what do we mean by Raman imaging? Essentially what you do is, if you look at, this is a picture of a few millimeters by a few millimeters of a rock sample, and what you do is at every point you collect a spectrum, right? You collect this kind of a grid-like fashion, so at every pixel you get a full Raman spectra, which basically shows a unique chemical fingerprint of the material that you have at that point. And then you will split this spectra into different components. You will organize it such, and you will get the spatial distribution of different minerals present in the sample. So right, if you look here, what you had in the optical image, now with this colored phase map, you have the different components now visualized. This is commonly done for many other materials outside the concrete world. So if you look at this particular sample on the bottom left, I can almost bet that many of you have touched this sample and also put it in your mouth. Can anybody guess what that thing is on the top, in the bottom left? What? Yes, so it's actually Excedrin. So this is you can say pain medicine. So it has caffeine, Tylenol, aspirin, and you can see, you can not only quantify how much of it is present, but you can see how they're spatially distributed. So if you're somebody like me who likes to break your tablet in half, and if all the caffeine was on the one side, you'll be just getting high on caffeine. Right? You'll not get any of the aspirin or Tylenol. So it's a useful tool from that point of view to do quality control, but also look at how things are spatially distributed. What we want to do is, can we do the same thing for cement and concrete? So let's start off with granite, a siliceous aggregate, and I would say briefly the motivation here to look at aggregates was, if you consider our nuclear power plants, which are aging, they're now 50 to 60 years old, Turns out that neutron radiation can convert the quartz in those aggregates to amorphous silica, which causes almost 18% expansion, and that can lead to cracking. So if you have that cracking happening in your nuclear power plants, that can be pretty dangerous. So we had a project with DOE looking at those phase maps for these systems. So what we do is we generate these Raman images for different phases that are present. On the same area, we get the EDS maps, and then we combine them together to what we get are these composite maps where we can not only quantify how much quartz and other phases exist, but where they exist. We get a decent correlation. This is a large area, again, high resolution map, again, came out a few years ago, where we can not only see different phases, but we can also see the boundaries. And turns out at the boundaries there are these phases which are kind of in the middle. Next is ordinary Portland cement. This is the main spice in concrete. So this also is, as you all know, is very complex. So what we do here is we put this cement in an epoxy disc. We create this very high resolution composite map, and within this map then again we can start to quantify all the different phases that can possibly exist. So we compare our results with XRD, we get a pretty decent correlation. And just to help you appreciate the high resolution nature of it, this is the A-light map on the left, just a binary map where white represents presence of A-light, and on the right is a zoom in portion for that part. So you can start to now see individual A-light particles, right? Which is very, gotta be careful about this, which is very hard to see with any other technique. Okay, so each of these images have 250,000 pixels in it. So it's a really, really high resolution map. So you can do this for all the phases that can possibly exist. You can even see things down to the nature of quartz, which is just by 1%. Okay. Again, this work came out also a few years ago, and this has been kind of the groundbreaking work which really started this work in the Raman imaging in our group. By the way, any guesses what this phase is? So this one I don't expect you to tell, but it's actually not a cement phase. It's not even a Raman image. It's actually an iPhone photo of the night sky taken by my student. Right? So this is, we're looking at the galaxy and the stars, and you can see the scale bar is 10 raised to about 14 kilometers. But we are doing the same thing that astronomers do, just count the white pixels. All right, calcium sulfur-aluminate cement. This is another cement which is very different from your OPC. Here also what we're trying to do is map out the different phases that exist. So you can see all the usual suspects here, ranging from yelemite to anhydrite, belite, and so on. And then if you look at that optical image on the left, I put right next to it the composite Raman image we obtain on the same area. And this is again on a small area, the data results I'm showing. We have now done very recently large area maps where we're able to now successfully quantify even the phase in a CSA cement, right? And that also becomes quite useful for understanding the mineralogy. One thing I should also note here, there's been a lot of talk about type 1L cements. So essentially you're adding calcite to it, and what this kind of technique enables is you can not only quantify how much calcite you have, but you can also get the particle size distribution of the calcite within the cement, right? And we'll see those results very shortly. I'm going to briefly show some results. These are very preliminary. Some work needs to be done here. You can look at coal-based bottom ashes. You can see the usual suspect. What is really challenging here is to find the amorphous phases. We are working on it actively. If we can do that, that'll be really, really nice, because then we can not only map crystalline but also amorphous phases, which really affects the reactivity of these ashes. We've done similar work for waste to energy ashes, where you burn the waste, you generate this ash, and you can then start to look at all the different mineral crystalline phases that exist in this system. There's also a lot of these kind of nasty phases with heavy metals containing lead, which sometimes are not detected by other techniques due to whatever reason, because the quantities are too small. We can now see that and then figure out treatment methods to treat these ashes and see if they can be useful for construction. Okay, so this is kind of the one most exciting part which we came up with last year. We talk about the particle size distribution of the entire cement, right? And the PSD is very important. But what we thought is, what if you get the size distribution of individual clinker phases? That's where the phase specific part comes in. So what if you took this Raman image and you know that this is pretty high resolution? So this small video here will show you what kind of phases you have and at what resolution. what if we took all this data and now start to get the size distributions of all the phases that are present, right? So what you will hopefully see next, but maybe it's not coming because it's stuck, you can get PhDs of these individual components. Okay, I think it's coming, it's just coming slowly. So instead of having one PhD, you will have, I have to I think click through, you will have different PhDs for different components. So one PhD for halite, one for ferrite, and even PhD for quartz and calcite. Now my suspicion is that for type 1L cements, when people talk about variability, it's not just how much calcite is present from a cement from one plant to another. It could be you have two plants exactly 10% calcite in their type 1L, but one of them is grinding a little bit too much or more than the other, and that calcite in that plant has a finer PhD than the calcite in the other, right? So that phase-specific PhD then could be very useful to understand water demand, workability, and even reactivity. You can also get shape analysis. Look at the aspect ratio. We know B-light tends to be round because it's kind of softer, so the shape of B-light is very different from A-light. You can get the aspect ratio and all sorts of combinations, and then in this paper, what we have also done is use all this data on a variety of cements, 10 different cements, and what we're able to do is we're able to predict their 3-day hydration just by considering these individual PhDs, right? So it could be very, again, interesting for quality control point of view. At a cement plant, you can look at these and quickly figure out how the cement is going to set, react, and behave. Okay, and it could be useful for concrete producers as well, ready-mix producers, because then they want to know if they're getting different SCMs, what is the PhD of the SCM, what is the PhD of the different components of the cement. You could look at now the dynamic systems. So you have the alkali silica reaction gel. It's traditionally considered very hard to detect because the ASR can be a little bit evasive, but again, Raman seems to have a very unique signal for the ASR gel, so we are actually able to map it out. The ASR gel, which is growing next to, let's say, a sand particle, because this ASR gel has a unique signal, and then this could be again useful in detecting from a forensic point of view that you have indeed ASR. So you can get this kind of combined Raman image for the ASR as well. Here's some SEM data on the same area, where again you can see very clearly, you see quite a bit of sodium here on the right side, and then you see the ASR gel image matches the sodium and potassium map, which also confirms that what we are seeing is not an artifact, right? Finally, if we talk about carbonation, we are also looking at mapping out how the calcium carbonate grows, both in 2D and also in 1D. So this is looking at how calcium carbonate grows on the surface. So if you have a cement sample which is sealed from all the sides, you just expose it to CO2 from the top, you see calcium carbonate grows as islands, and then eventually these big land masses, and calcium hydroxide slowly disappears. You can do this in kind of this cross-sectional 1D study, where you just carbonate from the top, you seal all the sides of your sample. You can see over time how calcium carbonate, basically this carbonation front, is moving forward, and at some point it basically saturates, because this is used to get say the carbonation depth or carbonation front, and your calcium hydroxide is just behaving the exact opposite. You can also do this kind of a little bit more advanced. If you really want to know what's happening at the interface, you can go a little bit advanced to see how the carbonation front is. And one thing interesting what we found here is that if we do the standard pH phenolphthalein test, results from the Raman imaging show that the calcite is a little bit below that front, and this is again has been seen from other techniques, but now we get this at a much higher resolution, which means if for people the carbon accounting is important, we need tools which can very exactly calculate how much calcite or CO2 has been precipitated. Okay, so if I were to summarize the different contributions here, this imaging approach, you can use it to obtain very high fidelity, high resolution phase maps of samples over large areas. You can use it for a variety of systems, static, multiple phase, so on. You can look at dynamic phenomena. You can also look at in the future, what I really see the future is, not Raman alone, but Raman to be used in conjunction with other techniques. So you have Raman and SCM to be used together. Then you have Raman, SCM, and a third technique together, and you have fourth technique together. So the more techniques you lay up on the same area, you get a very nice, what we call the correlative characterization, a complete picture of the image. Just like you can say, if you're imaging the Earth, you want to get all kind of different layers of information from different satellites. So now we have a bunch of papers that have come out in the past few years, a few in the pipeline. You can again take a look. If you need a copy of any of these, just send me an email. I'll happy to share. I will point out one of them, a recent one. We presented this a conference paper in Rylum in Canada last year, and this one is now published as a short, kind of easy to understand conference paper. If you type in Raman imaging of cementitious systems on Google Scholar with my name, you should be able to find it. And I'm also happy to send you a PDF of it. It talks about all the different applications, kind of give you a broad overview. So instead of reading 6 papers, you can just read 1. Okay, with that, I want to acknowledge the team who did the work. Well, okay, not all the students worked on this, but I would say at least 1/3 has worked on it. So some of them are listed here. There's also some who have graduated. I want to thank the sponsors who made this possible. And with that, I want to say I am open to take any questions, and if there's a lot of work that can be done in this field. We are just at the tip of the iceberg. We're just getting started, so I really need help from the community to grow, because there's so many applications and we cannot possibly do them all, but I'm happy to engage and teach and help you get there. Okay. With that, I'm happy to take questions.